Laudate Deum has arrived. Should you be concerned? Find out today on The Prophetic Eye. On October 4th, 2023, Pope Francis dropped another encyclical named Laudate Deum. According to Vatican News, Laudate Deum is a new document intended to update his encyclical letter, Laudato Si, and is a firm call for action. This new encyclical has some very important updates that you need to see, especially as it relates to Laudato Si. Many of you know what Laudato Si is, but I'm sure that some of you don't. So, let's take a quick stroll down the prophetic memory lane in order to get some context for what you're about to see, which is that these encyclicals are connected to the prophecies of Revelation 13 and 17. On May 24, 2015, a previous encyclical letter was released by Pope Francis, and it influenced and shaped the minds of leaders all around the world. According to Wikipedia, Laudato Si critiques consumerism and irresponsible development, laments environmental degradation and global warming, and calls all people of the world to take swift and unified global action. Subtitled Care for Our Home, the encyclical was a call to action, a call to take drastic steps to inspire the masses to care for our planet. And what went largely unnoticed by many who read the encyclical did not go unnoticed by those of you that have the prophetic eye. This encyclical included calls for Sunday rest to combat consumerism and to give the planet an opportunity to heal. For those that understand the book of Revelation, you know that the papacy is the first beast of Revelation 13. You know that this beast has a mark, and you know that this beast says that their mark of authority is the supposed power to change the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. It's this day that the Pope was promoting in Laudato Si, and it's important to mention that this is also the day that Christian nationalists are promoting to be legislated as a day of rest. In the Pope's latest encyclical, he continues his calls to take care of the planet by saying that 8 years have passed since I published the encyclical letter Laudato Si, when I wanted to share with all of you, my brothers and sisters, of our suffering planet. Yet, with the passage of time, I have realized that our responses have not been adequate, while the world in which we live is collapsing and may be nearing the breaking point. There's a sense of urgency that pours off the pages of the encyclical letter as he talks about his frustration that the world is not moving quickly enough to respond to the calls for action that he made 8 years ago in Laudato Si. Basically, he's saying that despite the international meetings, despite more and more people getting involved in the issue of climate change, in Pope Francis's opinion, it's just not moving fast enough, and the purpose of the new encyclical is to speed things up. So, what, pray tell, is in this new letter that is so urgent? That's what we're going to find out. Let's start in section 3, named The Weakness of International Politics. Pope Francis makes a statement that helps us understand his sense of urgency. In section 34, it says, "For there to be solid and lasting advances, I would insist that preference should be given to multilateral agreements between states." In this context, that word multilateral simply means an agreement between nations. Basically, he is insisting that the governments of the world have more international agreement to push common good policies along faster. Or, as Revelation 17 puts it, he's looking for the nations to have one mind with the ultimate goal that they give their power and strength to the beast. This sentiment is clear from section 35, where he insists that more effective world organizations be equipped with the power to provide for the global common good. He goes on to say, the issue is that they must be endowed with real authority in such a way as to provide for the attainment of certain essential goals. In this way, there could come about a multilateralism that is not dependent on changing political conditions or the interests of a certain few and possess a stable efficacy. This is a demand for real authority among the nations to reach goals that he believes are essential, and the desire is that this not be dependent on which political party is in power, but to have a stable system of authority that is always in place. Now, I don't know about you, but this sounds eerily similar to the demands that were made in 2009 by the previous Pope. In 2009, Pope Benedict also wrote an encyclical letter entitled Caritas in Veritate, where he also calls for the nations to have one mind by stating that in the face of the unrelenting growth of global interdependence, there is a strongly felt need, even in the midst of a global recession, for a reform of the United Nations organization, and likewise of the economic institutions and international finance, so that the concept of the family of nations can acquire real teeth. I hope you caught that. Here it is that we're talking about a nation represented as a beast, calling for a new order among the nations and stating that the concept of the family of nations can acquire real teeth. You can't make this up. In 2009, the same year that Pope Benedict made his calls for a reform of the United Nations organization, there was a conference in Copenhagen that was attended by the world leaders where this was said.
For the first time, we have a common approach round the world to cleaning up banks' balance sheets and restoring lending. We are engaging in a deep process of reform and restructuring of our international financial system for now and for the future, and we have maintained our commitment to help the world's poorest. These are not a single collection of actions. This is collective action, people working together at their best. I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation, a more open and a fairer global society.
Essentially, they were trying to answer the call to develop this new world order among the nations, but it didn't happen how they wanted it to. This is probably why Pope Francis stated that some of these conferences were failures, like that of Copenhagen 2009. I don't know about you, but I can feel the frustration. And in my opinion, that frustration is fully expressed in Laudato Deum as it relates to the recent COVID-19 pandemic, when he says that it continues to be regrettable that global crises are being squandered when they could be the occasions to bring about beneficial changes. This is what happened in the 2007 to 2008 financial crisis and again in the COVID-19 crisis. For the actual strategies developed worldwide in wake of those crises fostered greater individualism, less integration, and increased freedom for the truly powerful. If you didn't see it, he is saying that it is regrettable that the global crises are being squandered, which are the financial crisis and pandemic crisis, which he sees as opportunities for the nations to truly have one mind. In essence, he's echoing the old saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. But some say, what's the big deal? He's only trying to save the planet from climate change. Why is this even important? Why should we even care about this? The reason for this is that when Christ was on earth giving his disciples the signs related to the second coming, some of the things he talked about included signs in nature. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, he said that there shall be famines and pestilences, or as we call them, pandemics, and earthquakes in diverse places. And in Luke chapter 21, verses 25 and 26, he said there would be distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. The picture that is presented is one of fear, and that this fear would influence all the nations of the earth. And part of the fear is connected with the changes in nature. Christ talked about earthquakes and the sea and waves roaring as signs of his coming. The Pope also mentions this, where he talks about the global imbalance that's provoking the warming of the planet. He goes on to say that it's causing droughts and floods, the dried up lakes, communities swept away by seaquakes. And there's the word, seaquakes, a combination of earthquakes and the sea and the waves roaring. I believe that Jesus chose his words very carefully, and now there's something that I need you to see. So if you haven't been paying attention, please pay attention to what I'm about to show you. I want you to look for a word. It's a simple word, and that word is then. Okay, here we go. It's interesting that in Matthew 24, verse 7, right after Christ said that there would be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, he calls those the beginning of sorrows in verse 8. And in verse 9, he uses the word then. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. What we see here is being hated of all nations, or I could say international hatred. Let's go on. Over in Luke 21, after we see the sea and waves roaring, according to Luke, men's hearts would fail them for fear as the result of the changes in nature. Jesus continues and says, then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Do you see it? Earthquakes, the sea and the waves roaring, or as Laudato Deum puts it, seaquakes. Men's hearts all around the world fail them for fear of the future. Then God's people are delivered up for affliction. Then Jesus returns. Is it possible that Jesus is saying that persecution is going to follow an increase in famines and pestilences, or as we call them, pandemics, an increase in earthquakes and the sea and the waves roaring, and people's fear related to what is coming on the earth as a result of these things? Or, in other words, the future of the planet? I think so. And you can find this same sentiment expressed in the book, The Great Controversy,